Yes, absolutely delighted to be joined by Leon Ward from MyBnk. Hello, Leon. How are you doing today?
Hello, very good, thanks.
Good stuff. And I suppose just to start off, obviously this is part of our series for Financial Wellbeing Month that it's great to have MyBnk involved with. For those that don't know you or don't know MyBnk or not so sure about the work that you do, can you give us just a bit of background about you first as a person?
Yeah, so I am the Chief Executive Officer at MyBnk. I've been here for just over a year. The organization is 17 years old and provides financial education, workshops and training to young people in primary and in secondary schools and also in the post-16 space. So we work with young adults up to the age of 25 at the moment. And with those programs together, what that means is we work with around 40,000 young people a year.
Brilliant. Wow. And that's a great starting point because everybody I speak to says, I wish I had learnt this stuff at school. And we don't teach, we do actually, and we are. And I always am keen to let people know of a lot of the good work that's being done of organizations like yours and others that is doing this. I know we've got a long way to go, perhaps, but that's brilliant. So your role day to day, Leon, within MyBnk, tell us what that looks like a little bit.
Wow, it's so interesting. It's such an interesting question because the chief executive officer, I'm not sure is the right job title because in some ways you're the chief facilitation officer. You are just making sure that every part of the organization is talking to each other and connecting their work into each other, just making sure that everybody is contributing towards the same goals. And I suppose that's really the key part of the role is to set the overall vision with the board of trustees and set the direction of travel and to try and guide the organization as much as we can to achieving that. So no 2 days look the same because the other bit about being the CEO is you're also the chief external officer. So I spend quite a lot of time out and about doing things like this, but also in person, meeting organizations and politicians, potential funders, current funders, etc., who want to support the charity and support what we're doing. And what's really interesting is what you just said around the fact that everybody says, I wish I had this when I was young. In fact, in our new annual impact report, which I've just looked in, one of the first sentences I say is, when I tell people about our work, almost everyone reacts with, I wish I had that when I was young. Yet systematically, we know that still isn't happening. And I think that's the really important thing about financial education. The really great thing is that it's quite rare to work for an organization where when you tell people what you do, there's almost universal backing and support for it, which is why it's always a bit of a conundrum as to why we've not really, as a country, made much progress around financial literacy and therefore financial well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I echo that. I worked in the advice space for over 10 years, and you'd be at a dinner party and say that you're a financial advisor, and people would think you're automatically going to start giving them advice and run a mile, which isn't
Mm.
always a great thing. But the work that we do now at FinWELL to work on the education, the training, the guidance, the support side, everybody knows how much this is needed for various reasons. I suppose could you just tell us a little bit more about that? You know, why is MyBnk needed? We know some of it, but just to spell it out for people that might not know as much in this space.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of reasons. One is none of us have had a decent financial education if you went to state school. Systematically, it's kind of missing from the provision. And whilst it is in the national curriculum across all four nations of the UK in different areas, we actually haven't seen much of an improvement around financial literacy scores. And recent research that we put out, well, I say recent, it's in the last year with Compare the Market, shows that only 2 in 5 young people consider themselves to be financially literate, which means the majority of them are not. And I think that's the starting point because when I speak to lots of adults about what we do, not only do they say, I wish I had that when I was young, but they also say, I wish I had that now. People recognize that their financial literacy is quite poor, and it's not in the same sort of space as being illiterate. So if you can't read or write, there's often a deep shame associated to that. People feel embarrassed about that. But when you say you're not good with money or not good with numbers, we all sort of just laugh and joke and say, actually, yeah, same. You know, I'm crap at numbers too. I'm crap with money too. We kind of laugh about it. And I think that's quite interesting how you've got two polar opposite sort of approaches and thinking and interpretation about illiteracy. But that's why MyBank's needed, is because the economic circumstances we face are complex. You are sold financial services and products from a very early age, and you don't actually know what's going on. And I think there is something really powerful about financial education giving people literacy and agency. It might not give you more money, but it will absolutely allow you to know what's happening to you as you navigate the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. We see that a lot with the work we do at workplaces, and we'll talk a little bit about the crossover there and how we're trying to collaborate with the work that you do. Everybody would like more money. And the challenge that we hear every time with employers is, aren't our people just going to ask for more money and moan about the amount they're paid, or that the fact that it hasn't risen with inflation or whatever. And we've never had that. I think it needs to be flipped on its head, that hopefully people appreciate organizations are going through this challenging time as well, but there'll be those that are doing extra additional work and giving additional support around this. And you mentioned the amount of people that say, yeah, I wish I had this when I was young, but I want it now as well. The workplace has an opportunity to offer this and maybe differentiate themselves from other employers. But it's a really, really interesting space. Talk to me a little bit about the need then. So you work with younger students, and then right the way up to 25. How are you seeing that need change within the young adult space, and why is there such a need for that particular demographic as people start their work careers?
Well, I think the need is sort of universal. And so the young adults we work with need it because they've never had it. The young people we work with need it because they've never had it. And the adults that we work with need it because they've never had it. So there is a sort of universality to the fact that most people have not had a good financial education. But I suppose what we're seeing in our spaces is young people making money in different ways. So, income is different these days. We see a lot of young people making money through things like Vinted and through selling things on Etsy, sort of starting up micro businesses in their own home. We see spending behaviors changing. Lots of young people still living at home or living in multiple occupancy households, so people house sharing, etc., are not really understanding how to tackle joint bills, for instance. What happens if you are the sole person on a utility bill, but you live with 8 people and they rack up, a massive heating bill, but it's in your name and you struggle as a household to pay it? So I suppose that there are individual contexts that financial education has to adapt to. And in our most disadvantaged communities that we work in, with refugees and asylum seekers, etc., people that are new to the United Kingdom who might have English as a second language, people that are care experienced, who don't have family or friend networks to fall back on to be able to support them to understand what's happening with their money. I guess that's where we see much higher need. And your point about the workplace is also a good one, because we know that financial stress impacts people's performance at work. It stops them from sleeping. A Warwick University study showed that it can actually impact your IQ points if you are experiencing financial stress. And whilst financial education won't necessarily stop you from experiencing that stress completely, it might help you build some more coping mechanisms into your day-to-day life, and hopefully when you get out of whatever that context is, help you put in some financial stepping stones that can protect you in the future. So help you to manage risk. Whereas we find most people are budgeting to within an inch of their life, but don't know some of the other things that they can do to protect themselves, protect their money, and ultimately protect their health.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? The links between financial well-being and mental health, and even suicide prevention, which Financial Wellbeing Month is all about, are so intrinsic, and we have conversations on a daily basis with employers that are only now realizing that. There's been a lot of good work that's been done around mental health, and that's brilliant. I'm a mental health first aider and big advocate, but we're further behind, if not 5 years, even more perhaps, when it comes to financial health and well-being. But what are the main links that you see or that you feel between the two with the work that you do?
Yeah, so there's loads of research out there in this area, which is a good thing, because people are aware that obviously money and mental health go hand in hand. But some of the stats that we anchor our work into are things like 45% of financially stressed employees state that the worry is affecting their sleep, leaving them more tired at work. We also see that employees admitting that financial stress has an impact on their productivity at work. And for the under 35s, that is 61% of under 35s say that their productivity at work is impacted by financial stress. And that Warwick University study that I mentioned shows that the cognitive impact of financial stress can cost people between 10 and 13 IQ points. So this is very real. It's very tangible. There is lots of evidence around this. And most people who watch this will have experienced a financial stress point at some point in their lives. And I think it impacts you and your mental well-being beyond yourself, because it impacts your relationships, it impacts your social life, it impacts your connection to your friends, to your family. So it's detrimental in so many ways. And having a good financial well-being, a good financial education that allows you to know what is happening to you and your money will, we think, alleviate some of those stresses. And our research and the impact of our work shows that after our programs, confidence goes up, budgeting goes up, savings tend to go up. So those stepping stones to protect you against financial stress increase and improve.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that we see two sides to financial well-being. We see the obvious need for education and the practical tips and steps of how things work and what to do and when. But I'd love to get your thoughts as well. I think as big, if not bigger than that, is the whole psychological side, the relationships with money. We're doing more and more work around that side to get to the root causes of some of this stuff, because someone doesn't just overnight become a frivolous spender or an oversaver. Really, really interesting. You probably know this, but a stat that we use an awful lot, that the research being done, where our relationship with money is actually ingrained in us by the age of 7, and not from the age of 7, but by the age of 7. I've got a 7-year-old son, Leon, and hopefully we've done some good work. But that's just massive, isn't it? And you think of all the reasons for that will contribute to our attitudes, our behaves, our beliefs, our behaviors, our biases, our decisions, ultimately, and habits around money. But why the work that you do is so important, working from that very early age and trying to meet people, wherever their needs might be.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right, and it's really important to ensure that financial education is in the zone of learning. So when you are 7 years old, you're not learning about mortgages per se. You're learning the basics of budgeting and saving pocket money or delayed gratification, and helping kids understand that you can go and buy a packet of sweets now for £1, but if you wait, you might be able to get 3 packets for £2 because there's a special offer on, and you don't need to spend all your money straight away. And it's about, I think sometimes when people think financial education, they immediately go to these really big picture ideas, complex financial services and products. And I don't think that's necessarily right for people at that age range. Clearly, this is about teaching a skill for life. And my view is that financial education is a bit like a language, really. It's fluency, and it comes and moves according to what's going on in your life. And so in our programs at MyBnk, that's exactly what we try and do. Meet the learner where they are, give them real life examples that they might be tackling. We ask them about what's going on in their life so we can bring it to life for them and help them really unpack some of the things that we're talking about in relation to their lives.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges? Because this sounds very idyllic. We both know this, and hopefully most people listening to this will know this is needed, but it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it simple for us to kind of make change and have an impact. What are some of the main challenges that you're facing, some of the barriers perhaps to getting to where you'd like it to be?
I mean, I think one of the things is sticking it on the curriculum, even though it's already on the curriculum in all 4 areas, but not necessarily throughout the curriculum, is not a silver bullet solution, because you still have lots of issues in schools where the curriculum's very congested. putting it on the curriculum and not putting it in the inspection and accountability frameworks for schools means they might not do it because schools tend to do what's measured. But also, you do have the added problem, which the workforce don't necessarily have good financial literacy skills either. And my concern is that if we were to slap it on the curriculum, make sure that schools are inspected by it, that you still haven't got the skills and talent within a school to actually deliver the full financial education curriculum. And we surveyed some teachers last year with our Compare the Market research, and that showed that on average, teachers thought they needed 12 days to learn the full financial education curriculum, the ins and outs. Because one of the challenges is young people, as soon as you start teasing them with information, they ask you quite complex questions because they've heard about these things, they're interested, they're intrigued, they want to know, they have a hunger for the knowledge. And so they will ask you sometimes quite technical questions, and you need a deep understanding of financial education to be able to deliver it. So that's one of the challenges. I suppose the second is that financial education needs to build good habits. And I'm not sure that any individual education provider, us, you, other providers out there, are the right people to necessarily build those habits. I think that the financial services and products we're all using day to day could do better at supporting us to build those habits. So my bank account allows me to budget within the app. I don't need to write a spreadsheet out. I don't need to do those things. I can categorize my spending. It will tell me when I'm over budgeting or when I'm overspending in a category or underspending. It allows me to manage my money better. I would love for it to integrate itself with other financial lessons. And I think there is that is coming. I think you can kind of see that's what's happening with the products. But financial habits have to be embodied, I suppose, by products and services that we're using. So you've got that kind of nudge behavior. So that's another challenge, which is how do you actively, as an educator, help people build habits when you can't hold their hand every step of the way? You're kind of handing it over to the financial services products that they engage with. Then I think the third challenge that we find is it's quite overwhelming. There's a lot of content to learn to really be financially educated. You have to understand different products, you have to understand tax, you have to understand pay and income and banking and savings and technical terms like ISAs, LISAs, HTB ISAs. That's just one very small part of the savings product market there, but already that's 3 different acronyms that you need to know, 3 different products with 3 different sets of rules. So there is a sort of inherent complexity to this, and that's why I use the word financial fluency and literacy together, because you should be able to hear something that the Chancellor announces as a new product and understand it, because you should be able to find the information that you need to understand it properly. And we know that people don't get these things. Like when the energy price guarantee was released, so many people misunderstood it and thought your energy was just capped at £2,500, irrespective of your usage. I think financial people that are financially literate did understand it. Now, you could blame the government around their communications, but I think it was probably a bit of both. Lots of people not understanding how utility pricing works and price caps and all the rest of it. So I do think that is a sort of major challenge, which is that the market is complex, and sometimes you wonder if it's complex on purpose and none of us have a clue what's going on.
Yeah, well, we won't go down that road because there's lots of people that have their opinions on that. But it just, I suppose, demonstrates there's lots of challenges, right? And one that I'd add to that we see is, there's a lack of skills and education and confidence, either for the individual or, in your example, for the teachers, an element of imposter syndrome, well, if I do get asked these questions and I don't know the answer, that's not a good thing. But also, perhaps their own financial well-being isn't in a great place. Perhaps, they haven't been taking the steps or got a plan in place and are worried about certain things. So how can they possibly teach good behaviors and good habits when they're not, haven't got their own house in order, so to speak? And we see that a huge amount within the workplace. And have put something together with our FinWELL Champion training, very similar to mental health first aid training, because we see there to be a huge need to upskill key people, whether that be senior leaders, managers, mental health first aiders, with those skills and confidence, first to put on their own oxygen mask on, and then to be able to help their teams and people around them. But do you see that as well, just that whole imposter syndrome?
I think people lack confidence, and I think that's like with anything in life, isn't it? People feel that they're not confident with even the basics like cooking. And so if you look at, foodies on TikTok, the amount of people following for air fryer recipes and all the rest of it, because they don't have the confidence to just give things a go. And I think that's the same with money. And in some ways, that's quite helpful, because if you haven't got the confidence to navigate financial services and products, you might end up making some accidental bad choices. And so in some ways, I'd rather people be a bit more cautious. But I do think that financial education, to build the confidence of people to then spread the word, is a good thing. And life hacks, as it were, around finances is something that I do see people sharing. So with it being half term, I'm seeing lots of parents, even in my own social media, sharing where kids eat for free. This idea that you can pop out and spend a little bit of money, support the family well-being, but kids can eat for free. That kind of life hacks around financial services and products and other avenues, I suppose, is a good one. And so when people feel confident, I think they do naturally want to share stories and best practice. And I saw someone recently, I can't remember if it was on Instagram, about Monzo's cashback, which is now integrated directly into their app, so they're not using top cashback anymore. And it's like, actually people, when they do feel confident, will share best practice and will share top tips.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, confidence, a huge element of it. And then you'd say about sharing and sharing stories. We see that the first step in the workplace anyway is talking about money, right? And so similar are the challenges and the solutions potentially. It's a mental health and well-being. It's about opening up and creating that psychologically safe space and that culture where it can be spoken about, that we understand and recognize we're all in the
Yeah.
same storm. And it's going to take time. That doesn't happen overnight, but I think that's a huge step to start to smash the stigma and break the taboo down and get the conversations going.
And I think that's right. We're all in the same storm. Everyone's in very different boats, though. And what you need is financial education that suits you, the boats that you're in, I suppose. And I guess there's something in what you're saying about the workplace. Now, my view on this is that most people go to school, most people go to work, so they have to be the two avenues where you deliver financial education en masse. Because if you work in the NHS, in the civil service, or for a large bank, or for Tesco, or whatever, if they had financial education and financial well-being at the cornerstone of their employee well-being, we would be changing the tide on financial literacy, because that's where most people are. Now, for everybody that falls through the gap, organizations like MyBnk exist. We will always continue to work with refugees, asylum seekers, care experienced young people, single parents, young parents, whomever it is, because those people might not be in school, might not be in work, and have fallen through the gaps and need specialist interventionist provision, and that's what we're here for. And so I think you're right. I think the workplace has quite a big role to play. And in some ways, a partnership with Mental Health First Aid England totally makes sense. We've got MHFA trainers at MyBnk, but you can see how creating a culture where you talk openly about your mental health should support the culture in talking openly about your financial health and well-being, and the two together. I often hear people say, oh, in this country, we don't like talking about money. But in my experience, when people have got money, they like talking about it. It's when people don't have it, or when they're struggling to make ends meet, or when they're struggling to kind of keep on top of all the things they have to, where that confidence and that shyness starts to fall down and come in.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also maybe even that kind of comparison culture on social media, where we like to show that we're doing okay, or that we've got money, or that we're on the best holiday, or whatever. I think that's a big issue, maybe for another day. Talk to me a little bit. We have to talk about the petition, because I heard about it. I think I saw some posts that Louise was involved with from Go Henry, and also then yourself. That's how I got to know about you, and also Sharon at Young Enterprise. For those that don't know, talk a little bit about what that is, how that's developed, and where we've got to? Because you was recently in government, wasn't you?
Yeah, so Go Henry put together a petition on Parliament.uk calling for financial education in all schools, starting with primary school students. And I think the view of this is that, you know, maths is fine, but financial education has to go beyond maths. It's a life skill. And I think everybody in the financial education sector backs that. And I certainly back that, and MyBnk backs that, and I know others do too. And so there's currently 12,500 signatures on that petition. You needed a smaller number, I think it's 10,000, to get a government response, and then at 100,000 signatures, they consider it for a debate in Parliament. Separate to that, though, the Education Committee convened an inquiry on financial education, which meant that they held a number of evidence sessions and called on experts across the sector to come and give evidence to the committee. And there were two ways of giving evidence. One was a written submission, and then a group of us were called to give evidence in person from that group, which we've now done. And that's all been wrapped up, and we're just waiting for the official response and recommendations from the Education Committee on this. And in some ways, there's probably more power in the Education Committee response because it gives us, all of us, something to hook into, which is that, you know, MPs have recommended this as the right course of action based on evidence given by a select number of experts. This is the right thing to do. Let's do it. Whereas a petition, you know, might allow for a debate in Parliament, but that won't necessarily allow experts to be heard in the same way. Of course, MPs might make reference to research and all the rest of it, but in some ways, having you know, MyBnk there, Young Enterprise there, and other organisations, including the PSHE Association, to give the teachers' perspectives, I think allowed for a much deeper dive than perhaps just a petition would. So I think the popularity of financial education at the moment now is very good and very welcome.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I was going to ask you on that actually, because as I say, we heard about the petition, we did what we could in our small way to help it, and it was around that 10,000 mark actually, and it was great to see it reach that and surpass that. But I also then saw the response. I'd signed it obviously, and I got the email. I can't remember, it was early in the morning, and was really excited. I wasn't that surprised, to be honest, when I saw the response. I saw the reaction on LinkedIn and other social medias, quite a lot of surprise, and I wouldn't say uproar, but, oh, you know, we're already doing it. And I kind of got that because I knew that, as you've said, it was already on the curriculum. I did know that. Where do we go from here then? Because would you agree there seems to be some sort of disconnect, that they're saying it is on the curriculum? We believe it is, but yet we still want more. We want there to be more learning, more outcome-based learning, I suppose, for young people. Where do you see the disconnect to be?
I think the problem is that we're trying to shoehorn a solution into an education system that needs fundamental reform, frankly. And actually, when Martin Lewis put a poll out on Twitter saying, should it be compulsory in all areas of the curriculum, lots of teachers responded saying, yeah, but what are you going to take out? The curriculum is so congested. And actually, I think we have to review the approach we take to learning more broadly. And I suppose in Wales, where I live, you know, they're rebuilding and rolling out a brand new curriculum, and time will tell. I mean, it will take 2 generations before we know whether or not that has been impactful. But really, I think what we're lacking is the leadership to really think about education in its entirety. And so until somebody, you know, takes that challenge on, I guess what we're trying to say is, look, given how schools are currently run and how the market currently is in education, this is the answer. Putting it on the curriculum is one thing, but we know lots of schools in England don't have to follow the national curriculum to the letter because they're academies and free schools. And so they've got greater freedom and autonomy in what they teach, but they are expected to teach a curriculum in the spirit of the national curriculum. So, you know, even there's a challenge, because you stick it on the curriculum, okay, but the majority of schools in England now don't have to follow it if they don't want to. So what are the other tools and levers that government can use to encourage this in schools? Because to our earlier point, to round off the conversation, teachers also do want this, and they want it for their young people, but they don't have the time to do it. They don't have the skills to do it. And there is a lot of resources out there to support them do it, but without the timetable support and the backing from the school, then it's impossible to deliver everything that the young people need in the hours that they're in school. So I guess we're all asking for a sort of refocus, centralised financial education, because it does also deliver citizenship education, it delivers oracy education, because talking about money includes debating different perspectives and things. It helps you to understand tax, so you understand government and the role of tax and your role as a citizen. It's much broader than maths. And so I think all of that complexity comes into this, but we welcome the focus on it, and we will see what the Education Committee's output on this is in due course, and that will give us more things to lever, as we see the outcome of whatever the general election is later this year.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely driving the agenda. It's driving the conversation, which can only be a good thing. I suppose just leads me on to another point, is that if we're doing all we can, and I've got lots of friends who are teachers and colleagues, and they tell me exactly the same thing as you've just alluded to there. Where does the role of the parents come in? I'm a parent, I've got two young children, one's 7, as I mentioned, and another one who's 4. Surely there's some things that can be done. Now, there's a bit of a dichotomy there, because we've just said a lot of people in the workplace didn't have this education. The imposter syndrome of that. Well, how can I help educate my children when I didn't have the education? But I still personally believe, and I'd like to get your opinion on it, as to the role of parents and guardians and carers, because it's not all down to schools, is it? We've all got to take our shared responsibility, I suppose.
I think that's right. And my view on this is anything that helps young people talk about money is a good thing. So as a parent, if you can do some of the basics, help show them your payslip. Help your kids understand what choices you have to make when deciding what you're putting in the weekly food shop, when deciding what you do in your downtime as a family at the weekends, in the evenings, what choices and things you have to consider when making a decision about whether they can be in a sports club or whatever. Involve them in the decisions, involve them in understanding the basics. So every time you fill up the car or every time you go out for a meal, show them how much that would take, how long that would take for you to earn that based on what you currently earn. You can put in some of the basic fundamentals around money confidence and around shifting those attitudes to money without being a technical expert on lifetime ISAs or on, pension thresholds or income tax thresholds. You don't have to be a technical expert to still support the education journey of the young people in your lives. And I remember when I first came into role at MyBnk, I was asked to do a news interview at a local school that MyBnk had delivered in, and I was asked the same question. What can you do? And the summer holidays were coming up, and I said, set the budget, give your family the budget, and let your kids decide what they can do with that budget through those 6 weeks. So if your social budget as a family is, I don't know, £30 for the whole of the 6 weeks, say, help them understand what the options are. We could go to the park, that's free. We go to the park and do a picnic at home, that's going to cost whatever the food is, from your local shop. We could go swimming, but that means you're going to have no money rest for the rest of the summer. So just the basics, helping put in those cornerstones and those stepping stones so that when kids do eventually get the chance to have financial education, they've already got a bit of confidence talking about money and some of the real basics there. And then, of course, take the time to educate yourselves and learn together. There are loads of resources out there, including on the MyBnk website, on yours, on others. Have a look, get yourself up to speed and learn together. You don't need to learn solely on your own, digest it and then teach. You can do this together as a family.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I'm going to steal that, because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that when I say that we're on the Easter holidays at the moment, and it feels like it's all on our shoulders as parents. Oh, what are we going to do? It's going to be so costly, and balancing work and the cost of everything else. But just to involve them and have it as a family thing, or to share in that conversation is a huge. And you'd be surprised, right? You'd be surprised how many ideas they'll come up with. I know recently my kids got a few toys from the local charity shop, and we take old toys there, and when they get new ones in, they get that. And they're so inquisitive and curious. They want to know, well, how much does things cost and how does that work? And so you're telling me it's not just the bit of plastic in mummy and daddy's wallet that pays for things. It's actually money that's been earned. I think just having that open conversation and not being scared of that can be a great starting point.
Yeah, one of the good things that one of the money tips I've seen some parents do is when they go to the supermarket and they take the guns where you can self-scan, give it to the child and say, tell me when we've hit £40, or tell me when we've hit whatever your shopping limit is. And then you say, right, that's it, there's no more money. Is everything that you want in this basket really what you want, or do you want to swap some things out? Or should we save some money because we might put £10 of food back to save for some ice creams in the park tomorrow? Again, just bring them along with you on the journey, and little lessons, little and often is always the key with kids. They do learn this stuff, they do digest it, and really it's that habitual formation, those building those habits. And so in time, hopefully your kids will then, when they're doing their own food shop, think, well, I've hit my limit now, what am I going to do? So again, it doesn't have to be, understanding the impacts of compound interest rates. I'm not asking parents to understand those complexities, because there are financial education providers out there who can do that. But some of the basics, we absolutely need your help to integrate them into that young person's life.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the fundamentals. The first three letters of that is making it fun.
Yeah.
And I think we've learned that working with adults. It needs to still not be so scary. It needs to be approachable. It needs to be interactive and engaging, and hopefully fun if we can make it. There are ways, not easy all the time, but there are ways. So just lastly, just to kind of conclude this, it's been a brilliant talk. Financial Wellbeing Month, that's why we're here. The whole point of this, the idea was always to combine, financial wellbeing, mental health, and suicide prevention. How important really do you think that is for society, for workplaces, for young people, for everyone? And how important is it that you feel like organisations like ours, like yours, employers, come together for things like this to actually progress the conversation and make some positive impact?
I mean, it's critical. Like, money is a part of our lives, all of our lives, from very early on. Even if you don't actually touch any money, you see the difference in people with or without money. You watch people spending money. You sometimes make choices of things that you can and can't do because of money. So even if you're not, as a child, for instance, responsible for getting in the income, you still see your parents and your family members spending it. So how is it something that we interact with so early on in our lives, and for the rest of our lives, has no formal education around it? No wonder people feel financially unwell or financially stressed. No wonder people can end up in quite dark places because of their financial positions, because it feels like an avalanche piling on top of you every time you get something wrong. And my view is that people that make informed decisions, who are empowered with agency because they have a good financial education, will make for a better, more productive, healthier workforce, and for a population that finds it easier to be well. Now, of course, the warning note there is that just doing financial education on its own doesn't mean you're going to necessarily earn lots more money, or be able to pay all your debts off tomorrow. But what it will do, as I said earlier, is give you that agency to at least know what's going on to you at the moment. I mean, imagine if you do end up with some financial problems, and yet you can't understand the paperwork in front of you, on top of the fact that you also have to pay all this money out, or whatever it is that you have to do. Or when you're entering the world of work for the first time and nobody's spoken to you about salaries and understanding what your take-home pay is. No wonder people feel unwell around this stuff if they haven't got the tools to be able to negotiate and navigate money in its entirety. So I think it's critical.
Brilliant stuff. And your thoughts, I don't know about you, I've got a love-hate relationship with awareness days, weeks, even months that we've created with Financial Wellbeing Month. But as I say, how important do you think we utilise these days, weeks, or months, such as Financial Wellbeing Month, for organisations and employers to come together?
Yeah, I think it's good to have focus points throughout the year. You know, there are a lot of well-being months and days and focus days and all the rest of it, but I do think they're quite helpful because it allows, you know, a campaign style approach to try and get these things in front of people. I suppose the caveat to that is that well-being and particularly financial well-being requires you to take action month to month because most people get paid once a month, and so there's, you know, a whole load of activity that tends to happen around payday where we're all moving money around, making sure it's in the right pots, making sure all the direct debits are set up, and, you know, checking our meter readings and all the rest of it. There's always a flurry of activity around payday effectively, and I think I would encourage people to continue that and to think about money more regularly, and that doesn't have to be really big things. It can be as simple as checking your bank account every other day or every day if that's right for you. You know, checking it against your budget, building that budget weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever works for you. And I suppose taking the lessons that we're trying to teach you and putting them into action is the follow on then from months like this. But I think they're a great idea.
Yeah, brilliant. And it makes me think about a comment that Simon Blake, the chief exec at Mental Health First Aid England, said, and maybe with his experience with the kind of rise of mental health awareness and first aid training, that, you know what, for some companies, it will give them the option to be part of that campaign, part of that awareness day, week, or month, even as a tick box.
Yeah.
Because you know what, at least that's a starting point. And we moan a lot about that in the provider space. We don't want it just to be a tick box. But you know what, if it is a tick box to start with, and then we can build on that and work on that, then you got to start somewhere. But on that note, thank you so much, Leon.
Thanks.
It's been a really interesting chat and discussion. Hopefully people have found it useful. And let's see what we can do with Financial Wellbeing Month, not just this year, but in ongoing years as well, and a lot of collaboration to come.